The woods have always held a certain mystery. During the day, they're peaceful, almost inviting. But when the sun goes down, when the shadows grow long and the sounds of civilization fade away, that's when the woods reveal their true nature. A place where anything can happen, where you're never really alone. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 stories with you. 3 true accounts from people who ventured into the forest and came back changed. These aren't campfire tales meant to entertain. These are real experiences that will make you think twice before stepping foot in the woods again. So turn off the lights, put in your headphones, and whatever you do, don't go outside alone tonight. Let's begin. This first story comes from a guy named Derek. Back in the fall of 2019, Derek and 3 of his college friends decided to rent a cabin for a weekend getaway. They wanted to disconnect from the world, get away from their phones, and just relax. The cabin they found was deep in Blackwood Forest, about 2 hours north of Seattle. It was cheap, isolated, and according to the listing, the perfect place to unplug. Derek told me they arrived just before sunset on a Friday. The drive up had been beautiful. Golden leaves, winding roads, the whole autumn aesthetic. But the deeper they got into the forest, the quieter it became. No other cars, no houses, just trees, endless trees. When they finally pulled up to the cabin, it wasn't quite what they expected. The photos online had made it look nicer. In person, it was old, really old. The wood was dark and weathered, the windows were smudged with dirt, and the porch sagged in the middle like it might give out at any moment. But Derek's friend Matt just laughed it off. "It's got character," he said. "Come on, it'll be fun." They unloaded their bags and headed inside. The interior wasn't much better. The furniture was dated, the air smelled like mildew, and there was this weird stain on the ceiling in the living room that none of them wanted to talk about. But the fireplace worked, and there was beer in the cooler, so they decided to make the best of it. That first night was fine. They grilled burgers, played cards, told stupid stories. Around midnight, they all crashed. Derek said he slept hard, harder than he had in months. But then, the second night, that's when things started. Derek woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. He lay there in the dark, listening, trying to convince himself it was just an animal. A deer, maybe, or a raccoon. But the steps were too rhythmic, too human. He sat up and looked over at Matt, who was asleep in the other bed, snoring softly. Derek didn't want to wake him. Not yet. So he got up, crept over to the window, and peeked through the dusty curtains. The porch was empty, but the footsteps didn't stop. They moved across the porch, then down the steps, then stopped, right in front of the door. Derek's heart was pounding now. He backed away from the window, eyes locked on the door. The handle didn't move. There was no knock. Just silence. And then, from somewhere deep in the woods, he heard it. A whistle. Not like a bird call, not natural. It was a tune, slow, off-key, like someone was trying to remember a song they'd heard a long time ago. It echoed through the trees, distant but clear. Derek stood there, frozen, until the sound faded. Then he climbed back into bed, pulled the covers up to his chin, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, he told the others what he'd heard. Matt brushed it off. Probably just some hiker passing through. But Derek's other friend, Sarah, looked uneasy. She admitted she'd heard something too, a tapping sound on her window around the same time. She hadn't looked. She'd been too scared. They all agreed it was probably nothing. But there was this unspoken tension in the air now, like they were all waiting for something to happen. That afternoon, they decided to go for a hike to shake off the weirdness. The trail behind the cabin was overgrown, but it was marked with faded orange tape tied to the trees. They followed it for about an hour, deeper into the forest. And that's when they found it. Another cabin. This one was smaller, older, half collapsed. The roof had caved in, and the windows were shattered. But what made them stop cold was what they saw on the door. Scratches. Deep, jagged scratches, like something had been trying to claw its way inside, or out. Matt tried to joke about it. Probably just a bear, he said, but his voice was shaky. Sarah wanted to leave. She said the whole place felt wrong. But Derek's other friend, Kyle, was curious. He walked up to the cabin, peered through the broken window, and then went pale. "There's something in there," he whispered. They all gathered around and looked inside. In the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light, was a pile of blankets. And on top of the blankets, bones. Animal bones, they hoped, but they didn't stay to find out. They ran. All four of them, sprinting back down the trail, not stopping until they reached their cabin. They locked the doors, shut all the windows, and sat in silence, trying to process what they'd just seen. That night, Derek didn't sleep at all. None of them did. Because around 2 a.m., the footsteps came back. This time, they weren't just on the porch. They circled the entire cabin, slow, methodical, like someone was inspecting it. And then came the whistle again. Closer now, right outside Derek's window. He didn't look. He couldn't. The whistle stopped, and then from the woods, they heard a voice. "Come outside." It was faint, almost a whisper, but they all heard it. Matt grabbed a flashlight and shone it out the window. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees. And for just a second, Derek swears he saw a figure, tall, impossibly thin, standing just beyond the tree line, watching. Then it stepped back into the shadows and vanished. They packed up that night, threw everything into the car and left at 4 a.m., speeding down the dirt road with the headlights on full blast. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. When Derek got home, he looked up the cabin online. The listing had been taken down. He tried to find the owner, but there was no contact information. It was like the place never existed. A few weeks later, he got a message on Facebook from someone he didn't know. No profile picture, no name, just one sentence. "You shouldn't have looked inside." Derek deleted the message. Deleted his whole account, actually. He's never been back to Blackwood Forest, and he never will. This next story comes from a woman named Emily. In the summer of 2021, she and her boyfriend Josh decided to go backpacking in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. They were experienced hikers. This wasn't their first time in the wilderness. But what happened on that trip still haunts Emily to this day. They started their hike early on a Saturday morning. The plan was to camp at a remote spot about 8 miles in, spend the night, and hike back out on Sunday. Easy. They'd done it a dozen times before. The weather was perfect, clear skies, a light breeze, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive. They made good time and reached the campsite by early afternoon. It was a small clearing near a stream surrounded by dense forest. Peaceful. Quiet. Too quiet. Emily said that's the first thing she noticed. There were no birds, no insects, just the sound of the water and the wind in the trees. She mentioned it to Josh, but he didn't think much of it. "Maybe it's just a slow day for wildlife," he said. They set up their tent, gathered firewood, and made dinner as the sun started to set. That's when they saw the ranger. He came walking up the trail, dressed in a faded green uniform, carrying a worn backpack. He looked old, maybe in his 60s, with a lined face and tired eyes. He nodded at them as he approached. "Evening," he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "Hey," Josh replied. "You heading out?" The ranger shook his head. "Just making rounds. Making sure folks are safe out here." Emily thought that was a little odd. They'd camped in these woods before and had never seen a ranger this deep in the backcountry. But she didn't say anything. The ranger looked around their campsite, his eyes lingering on the tent, the fire, the tree line. Then he looked back at them. "You two planning on staying the night?" "That's the plan," Josh said. The ranger was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'd recommend you don't." Emily's stomach tightened. "Why not?" The ranger glanced over his shoulder toward the darkening woods. "There've been reports, people hearing things, seeing things, out here at night." "What kind of things?" Josh asked. The ranger hesitated. "Hard to say, but if you hear anything strange tonight, voices, footsteps, anything that doesn't sound right, don't go looking for it, and whatever you do, don't leave your tent." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you serious?" The ranger's expression didn't change. Dead serious. He gave them one last look, then turned and walked back down the trail, disappearing into the trees. Emily wanted to leave right then, but Josh convinced her to stay. "He's probably just messing with us," he said, trying to spook the out-of-towners. So they stayed. As night fell, Emily couldn't shake the ranger's warning. Every sound, every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves put her on edge. Josh tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes and stoking the fire, but she could tell he was uneasy too. Around 10 p.m., they crawled into the tent and zipped it shut. Emily lay there in her sleeping bag, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. And then just after midnight, she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching through the leaves just outside the tent. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She reached over and grabbed Josh's arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded. His face was pale. The footsteps circled the tent, once, twice. Then they stopped. And then came the voice. "Help me." It was faint, a woman's voice, trembling, desperate. "Please, help me." Emily's heart was racing. Every instinct told her to stay put, but the voice sounded so real, so afraid. Josh unzipped the tent an inch and peeked outside. Emily grabbed his wrist. "What are you doing?" "Just looking," he whispered. He shone his flashlight through the crack. The beam swept across the clearing, illuminating the trees, the stream, the dying fire. "Nothing. There's no one out there," he said. But the voice came again, closer now. "Please. I'm lost." Josh zipped the tent back up. "We're not going out there." They sat in silence, hearts pounding, waiting. The voice called out a few more times, each time sounding a little different, a little less human. And then it stopped. The rest of the night was silent, dead silent. Emily didn't sleep, neither did Josh. When the sun finally rose, they packed up as fast as they could and started hiking back. They didn't talk. They just walked, faster and faster, until they reached the trailhead. As they were loading their gear into the car, Emily saw something that made her blood run cold. There was a notice board at the trailhead, and pinned to it was a missing person flyer. A woman, mid-30s, brown hair. She'd gone missing in these woods 3 years ago, never found. And in the photo, Emily recognized her. It was the voice from the night before. This final story comes from a guy named Aaron. Aaron's a hunter, has been for most of his life. He knows the woods better than most people know their own neighborhoods. So when he tells you something's wrong in the forest, you listen. In October of 2022, Aaron set up a trail camera in a section of woods he'd been hunting for years. It was deep in the backcountry of northern Michigan, miles from the nearest road. He'd seen signs of deer in the area, tracks, droppings, rubs on the trees, so he figured it was a good spot to monitor. He strapped the camera to a tree, set it to motion-activated night vision, and left it for a week. When he came back to check the SD card, he wasn't expecting much. Maybe some deer, maybe a coyote or two. What he got was something else entirely. The first few photos were normal. A doe and her fawn passing through at dusk, a raccoon sniffing around. Then, nothing for a few hours. But then, at 2:47 a.m., the camera triggered again. The photo showed the clearing in front of the camera, trees, shadows, and in the center of the frame, standing about 20 feet from the camera, was a person. At least, Aaron thought it was a person. It was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, and thin. Too thin. Its arms hung down past its knees, and its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was listening for something. But the worst part? It was staring directly at the camera. Aaron's stomach dropped. He clicked to the next photo. The figure was closer, maybe 15 feet away now, still staring. Next photo, 10 feet. Next photo, 5 feet. The last photo was just a blur, like the figure had lunged at the camera. Aaron sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He told himself it was a person, maybe a trespasser, maybe someone messing with him. But deep down, he knew that wasn't right. He decided to go back to the camera. He had to know. So the next morning, he drove out to the woods, parked his truck, and hiked in. The whole way, he had this gnawing feeling in his gut, like he was being watched. When he reached the clearing, he stopped cold. The camera was gone. Not just taken down. Gone. The strap was still on the tree, but it had been torn, like something had ripped the camera free with its bare hands. Aaron searched the area looking for footprints, drag marks, anything. And that's when he found them. Prints in the mud. But they weren't human. They were elongated, almost hand-like, with long, claw-tipped fingers. And they were everywhere, circling the tree, leading off into the woods. Aaron followed them. He doesn't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was stubbornness. The prints led him deeper into the forest, to a part he'd never been before. The trees here were older, thicker, and the undergrowth was so dense he had to push through it. And then he found the camera. It was lying in the middle of a small clearing, shattered into pieces. The lens was cracked, the casing was dented, and the SD card was missing. But that's not what made Aaron run. It was the drawings. Scratched into the trees all around the clearing were symbols, crude, jagged symbols that looked almost like stick figures, but wrong, twisted. And in the center of the clearing, drawn in the dirt, was a circle. And inside the circle, written in what Aaron hopes was mud, were 2 words. "You're next." Aaron didn't stick around. He ran back to his truck, drove home, and hasn't been back to those woods since. A few weeks later, he got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was the SD card from his camera. He plugged it into his computer. There were new photos on it, photos taken after the camera had been destroyed. They were all of Aaron's house, taken at night, from outside his windows. Aaron moved a month later. He won't say where, and he doesn't hunt anymore. The woods are beautiful. They're peaceful. But they're not ours. They belong to something older, something that watches from the shadows and waits for us to let our guard down. Derek, Emily, and Aaron learned that the hard way. And now, so have you. So the next time you're in the forest and you hear something that doesn't quite sound right, maybe it's best to just turn around and leave. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories. Because trust me, I've got plenty more where these came from. Sleep tight.